Dear citizens in Ukraine, citizens of Russia, and the rest of the world, I'm Padmini Arhan, author and presenter, padminiarhan.com, prakriti.padminiarhan.com, representing the divinity. I welcome you all to the topic Ukraine-Russia war strategy. Russian President Vladimir Putin's personal goals have consistently changed since last November 2021. President Vladimir Putin, up until invasion of Ukraine, made public statements via Russian state media and Russian officials in Kremlin's inner circle, like Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, that Russia has no plans to invade Ukraine then or later. Russian President Vladimir Putin stated that Moscow was merely responding to Donetsk and Luhansk separatist leaders in Donbass region request to protect them from Kiev's armed forces violence. The 8 years of political unrest and ethnic clashes in Donbass has trilateral participation, as mentioned earlier on this topic via this domain. All three factions, that is the Western installed former Kiev government, the West and Russia, are responsible for status quo in eastern Ukraine and the ongoing war. On February 21, 2022, Russian President Vladimir Putin declared Donetsk and Luhansk independent republics via decree on territories in foreign sovereign nation. Subsequently, Kremlin continued to maintain the political statements on no plans to attack Ukraine, then moved forward with military invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022. Moscow even then denied any military operations against civilian areas, claiming the military strikes strictly targeted Ukraine's military infrastructure and facilities, with the latest row over some more than 30 biolabs, that is biochemicals, biolabs that are United States financed according to Moscow. In this respect, Moscow together with ally Beijing have sought explanations from Washington regarding bioweapons experiment centers in Ukraine. Though Beijing, World Health Organization, and counterparts in the United States and EU owe similar submissions on the coronavirus-created global health and economic disaster. That aside, Moscow intensifying shelling and bombing in Ukraine, necessitating civilian evacuations to neighboring countries across Ukrainian border, is the ground reality. There is no doubt that President Vladimir Putin's war is not only affecting the innocent population in Ukraine, but also seriously hurting Russia and Russian population with lives and economic liability, the inevitable ramifications of all wars without exception. Russian military casualties involving high-ranked major generals in Ukraine combat exchange is a major blow to President Vladimir Putin's so-called special operations, only expected to deliver more deaths and destructions, perhaps on both sides, that can never benefit any aggressor drawn into prolonged quagmire. The international report on recent attack on Children's Hospital, including maternity hospital in Ukraine, is the last straw, transforming the civilian areas into a war zone. In case such attack is to trigger no-fly zone, this movie has already been seen in Libya in 2012, and the deadly consequences of event getting out of control. And at that time in Libya, it was NATO that was responsible for the carnage in Libya, misusing the no-fly zone. That is well documented regardless of narratives from the Western media. Now, Ukrainians' disappointment and frustration over no-fly zone not imposed to prevent Russian airstrikes is valid. However, the possibility of no-fly zone leading to deeper conflict is worth consideration. Russian military operation affecting Russia and Russian people deprived of factual information about the war is unsustainable. Often, the leader of any powerful nation, such as Russia, embarking on military intervention to annex territories of a sovereign nation, near or far, the economic cost of even waging a war weighs down on the outcome. In other words, the pros are outweighed by the cons in any warfare, especially the kind that is intended to invade and occupy a sovereign nation or annexation of territories such as the one ongoing in Ukraine. The financial resources and reserves are depleted, draining the economy. Furthermore, this present time, especially amid dreadful global pandemic caused health and economic catastrophe, has inflicted enormous damages in people's lives, with recovery farther away depending on world events. President Vladimir Putin declaring ceasefire with withdrawal of Russian forces from Ukraine would deliver economic relief besides saving Ukrainian and Russian lives. The immediate priority to facilitate humanitarian efforts. In the 4 round of talks held so far between Ukraine and Russia, the agreement on humanitarian corridors on the onset sounds generous and compassionate. Nonetheless, the grim reality is the Ukrainians and Russians alike are forced to leave their homeland, towns and villages to escape bombing and violence. The situation rendering them refugees in foreign shores is tough and inhumane. Instead, the Russian President Vladimir Putin ending the killing and demolition would mitigate losses and provide opportunity for healing on both sides of the armed conflict. The children, elderly, sick, the pregnant, mothers, and so many are subject to this unnecessary turmoil that must be addressed and paid attention to in the irrational war. President Vladimir Putin would benefit from stopping the military aggression against Ukraine and diverting to economic revival in the domestic front desperately required for Russian population survival. The action would reconnect Russians with the rest of the world. Russia has a lot to offer positively, and war is not the right path to achieve anything that are counterproductive. There is nothing to gain from erroneous and egregious decisions like invasion and occupation of a sovereign nation and territorial integrity. Russia's reversal in course from being existential threat to peaceful negotiator and instead extending good, reliable relations with those sharing the border and others away from it would be mutually beneficial, returning peace, economic growth, and prosperity. Finally, I share my great admiration and appreciation to Ukrainian citizens, soldiers, and leadership, President Volodymyr Zelensky and others, for their patriotism demonstrated in defending their homeland. In the context of International Women's Day, just 2 days ago, the Ukrainian women, as mothers, wives, sisters, daughters, girlfriends, and in any other relationship, like aunts, grandmothers, daughters-in-law, and so on, are truly beautiful in their sacrifice, love, and care for their families, as well as the country, Ukraine, they belong to, and sadly subject to the struggles since 2014 and up until now. The real beauty lies in the heart, mind, and soul reflected in deeds and dedication that is witnessed currently in Ukraine among all citizens, and women in particular are burdened or extraordinary pain and suffering as they have to leave their male members in their homeland that is under attack and being invaded by Russian military forces at Russian leadership, President Vladimir Putin's behest. And accordingly, the women, children, along with their family members such as dependents, and many accompanied by the women to safe havens across the border. It is rather heart-wrenching to see the children crying their heart out when they are separated from their father and the male members of the family. I don't think any leadership be proud of such situation, having brought upon the sadness and suffering on all these people who are not at fault. When you really come to think of it, they are innocent victims. They are not the ones who carried out the violence in Donbass region that President Vladimir Putin claims as the cause for this irrational invasion and occupation. At the same time, I also commend the Russian women, the Russian mothers, grandmothers, wives, daughters, sisters, girlfriends, whatever relationship they might have with their loved ones, the male members who are conscripted and deployed in Ukraine to kill innocent children, women, and others, including this heinous and cruel attack on Children's Hospital and Maternity Hospital and so on. It is not something that any citizens of any country, the normal citizens, the ones who are peace-loving, the ones who want to have good relations with their neighbor, near and far, those citizens would never ever would seek any form of aggression against their friends, even families and relatives across the border, like many Russians do have relatives in Ukraine and along the borders, Ukraine-Russian borders, where there are many Russian-speaking families have also been subject to this heinous crime against innocent people of that land. And I also call upon United Nations peacekeeping force. I'm not sure why United Nations peacekeeping force has not been considered to provide some form of protection, at least in providing the necessary humanitarian facilities and provisions that are so critical when the population are forced out of their homeland, when it should not even be the case. No citizen should be subject to forced evacuation from their homeland. And yet that is exactly what is happening in Ukraine due to President Vladimir Putin's erroneous and egregious decision to continue this unnecessary war. So I extend my appreciation and compassion to Russian women who apparently are kept in the dark. When you come to think of it, for many of them do not even know that their sons, their husband or fathers, whatever relationship they might have with the male members who are conscripted and deployed in Ukraine, they don't seem to have much information about them, which again is extremely sad. And one can imagine how frustrating and anxious those family members would be for not knowing the whereabouts and not having any information about their loved ones, supposedly serving the nation and defending Russia when that is not the case. Russia is not under attack. There is no threat to Russian security. There has been no, there hasn't been any form of aggression or endangerment to citizens in Russia or Russian sovereignty. Whatever the reason that is being stated for this invasion of Ukraine by President Vladimir Putin, it happens to be the Donbas region. The Donbas region agreed that there has been loss of lives, which is extremely tragic. As I have said many times over, loss of life anywhere on any side is regrettable. Every life matters, regardless of which side of the faction they are from. Only the ones who lose their loved ones, they know the pain and suffering. So there cannot be any form of discrimination in terms of loss of lives. But then for President Vladimir Putin to use that as the only reason, that is the Donbas region as the only reason and the contentious issue to wage a war against Ukraine is completely unreasonable and irrational. It is not clear how one can, especially the leadership, the political authority at the helm, such as President Vladimir Putin, who holds a very responsible position, not only as the leader, president of a great nation like Russia, and also the wonderful people, Russians, who are extremely smart, hardworking, and they have been through tremendous struggles throughout history, a leader who represents such nation to wage a war against the neighbor, a young nation, who have also had their fair share of struggles continuously since inception as an independent democratic nation. They have not been really allowed to even exist peacefully when you come to think of Ukraine. Even the earlier Chernobyl disaster, the nuclear meltdown that happened in the nuclear accident in the 80s, early 80s, I think it was 1984, 83, 84. And that was a major disaster for Ukrainians. And at that time, they were part of the former Soviet Union. And many people succumbed to that horrible nuclear accident. And then onwards, even subsequent to being liberated from former Soviet Union, Ukraine has struggled all along, especially in the last 8 years or so, since 2014. That's when things started going really bad for Ukrainians, which is really unfortunate. And it is not the people, but the ones who were in government, they let it happen, and they are responsible for the Donbass region, political unrest, losing Crimea to Russia, and then the series of political instability and political unrest in eastern Ukraine. The Kiev government, they have plenty to accept in terms of responsibility for letting it happen, and they could have averted right from the beginning and resolved all of their internal issues and struggles among themselves in a peaceful manner and approach, using dialogue and other form of peaceful resolutions. So that did not happen, and that is why Ukraine is subject to what it is going through right now. Again, there is no justification whatsoever to let Ukraine experience this tremendous pain and suffering for people who are left with no choice but to leave the country they love very much. And that is the place they have known, and they had recognized and accepted that as their homeland, which is their homeland. And now they have to leave that country, which again is not, it's not only unreasonable, it is unacceptable. President Vladimir Putin's decision to prolong warfare is not going to deliver the desirable outcome in terms of what President Vladimir Putin is hoping for and expecting. As I have said earlier, time and time again, there are no winners in any warfare, especially with casualties on all sides. I don't think any side, any faction in combat can possibly take pride and claim victory with the casualties suffered on all sides, that would be extremely inhumane, and in a way it would also be showing lack of concern for the lives of their own citizens and the armed forces deployed in this conflict. Again, I repeat, the Russian mothers, grandmothers, wives, daughters, sisters, and girlfriends experiencing agony and pain over no information or sad news about their sons, fathers, husbands, brothers, boyfriends, or whatever relation they have with their male members of the family who are deployed in Ukraine. They are enduring difficult times brought upon them by their president, Vladimir Putin, through warfare against Russia and Russian economic interest. This war is not just about invasion and occupation of Ukraine. As a matter of fact, this war has now evolved into a warfare against Russian population and Russian economic interest. Though Ukraine is mistakenly treated as the enemy, the war must come to conclusion, heeding humanitarian nature and conditions to save and rehabilitate lives on both sides of the battle. Again, President Vladimir Putin is urged to end this warfare and bring relief not only to the people of Ukraine, but also to the people of Russia and Russia's economy. Russia's economy has now been brought to a grinding halt since the invasion of Ukraine, which is completely unwanted and unnecessary, and this could all be reversed even now with President Vladimir Putin making the right decision to cease fire and withdrawal from Ukraine without any further delay or procrastination. I convey my sincere condolences to families in Ukraine as well as the families in Russia who have lost their loved ones in this unnecessary and unreasonable warfare. Peace to Ukraine and Russia. The topic: Ukraine-Russia war strategy, not yet over until ceasefire and military operation from Russian side comes to an end. I am Padmini Arhant, author and presenter, padminiarhant.com, prakriti.padminiarhant.com, representing the divinity. Thank you for your interest and attention.